I figure I've got the time and I've got the battery left for it. Let's just go on first to the type rants. We'll just start, right with the most mundane thing we can think of. Normal types. In general, normal types are better at what we refer to as neutral coverage. That is, they're generally effective against everything, but not super effective against anything. And they have generally decent defensive properties, which means that currently in the game, they're not really used for anything except sitting on gyms, sadly. Their attacks are resisted by rock, steel, and double resisted by ghost types because, they're ghosts. However, they are immune, which is to say double resistant against ghost type attacks. So in that situation, it's kind of a wash. The winner is whoever's going to be using attacks that aren't normal and or ghost type. For example, a Gengar with Focus Blast can bully normal types. A normal type with Psychic can bully a Gengar. Had to run across the road there for a second. Other than that, the only actual weakness that fighting types have is against fighting types. Sorry, normal types is against fighting types. So if you're trying to beat up a normal type boss, a raid, the only option you have for super effectiveness is fighting, which is why normal type raids can be a real pain in the ass. They might not be doing much damage to you, but unless you've got a lot of really good fighting types, Machamp, Hariyama, like Mewtwo with Focus Blast or something like that. But like I said, in general, the only thing that normal types are used for in the game's meta right now is sitting on gyms. Blissey probably being the absolute exemplar of this. Normal types, the really good ones, tend to have decent attack, but they usually have really good stamina and defense. Some good normal types right now, just to give people a flavor. Snorlax is probably the most well-rounded normal type right now. He actually has enough attack power that if he has Hyper Beam or something with Stab, he does pretty good damage. He just doesn't do super effective damage against anything. Blissey is probably best left with Zen Headbutt and Dazzling Gleam or maybe Psychic, so that you can sit her on gyms and she can really annoy fighting types that are sent out against her. But if you're throwing Blissey's at a raid boss, you are quite exactly doing it wrong. Other good normal types, I'd like to say Zangoose is good. He at least has a high attack power, so he could be a glass cannon, if not for the fact that he doesn't get any normal type attack, so he doesn't get any stab bonus. Ursaring. Ursaring is actually a really interesting normal type in that he can get Hyper Beam and thus stab. On his charge move, he's relatively strong, but he doesn't get a normal type fast attack, which does kind of hold him back. On the buff side, though, he can get Play Rough as a charge move, which defensively is really great if you put him on gyms because it's super effective against fighting types. Or you can use him as an off-type fairy attacker. Alternatively, you can give him Counter and Close Combat, which are both fighting moves, and use him essentially as a fighting type who does not have fighting type weaknesses, i.e. to Psychic, Flying, and Fairy. Then you can use him to, bully Tyrannitars and Agrons and that sort of thing. Tauros is a regional, but being in the United States, I have access to him. He's decent, but not spectacular at anything. Those are really the only good normal types I can think of off the top of my head. It's just most normal types that aren't some big, bulky monster are either Ditto, who can turn himself into other things, or they are just really mundane, weak stuff like Eradicate, birds, you know, Pidgey, Fearow, Dodrio, that sort of thing. Stuff that's its CP never really gets over 2,000, and thus you're never going to see them in actual combat. So that's pretty much what you need to know about normal types. Oh, I almost forgot. Slaking. Slaking has really great stats, and his charge moves are fairly varied, and they're all really good. Play Rough, Hyper Beam. I'm trying to remember what the third one is. It's like Earthquake or something like that. But his problem is his fast attack does essentially nothing. It's like Yawn is basically just splash, right? It does like 0.1 damage or something like that. So essentially what he does is he just sits there and does essentially nothing, and then when he finally gets a charge attack, it hurts like hell. Again, just sort of a placeholder who can sit on gyms. But other than that, we might eventually get normal types that are worth something, and if the game ever starts emphasizing defense somehow, normal types will be useful again. But for right now, I say avoid normal types. At least in terms of like powering them up. Me, I've got a Snorlax and I've got a Blissey that I use to sit on gyms, and that's pretty much it. I more or less recommend the same thing for you. Just to point out, Blissey's main thing is that if you're not high enough level, you literally can't beat a Blissey that's fully motivated. Like, you'll just run out of time. It's essentially a mini raid boss in that regard. The one thing that Blissey, and to a certain extent Slaking, are good at is if you take out a gym just before an egg hatches on it, you want to put one of those guys on there, and hopefully it'll discourage people from taking it out. Like, unless you got an entire team of people bullying it, you put a Blissey on with just like 2 or 3 minutes left, they probably can't take out the gym before the egg hatches. So there is that. All right, that's 7.5 minutes. We'll call it there.